Hey guys, we're going to finish up the rise of Nazism. So we're going to finish up with it today. Basically, guys, after World War II has begun, there's a lot of fighting taking place. We're going to try to talk in little bits later about some of the things that were taking place during World War II. But the other part of our standard was talking about the Holocaust. Okay, most of you already know about the Holocaust. You've got a lot of knowledge about it, so we're not going to go into great detail. But let's just go ahead and cover the basics. Basically, guys, Hitler's in charge. He's the dictator of Germany, and he's coming through Europe full force. Ultimately, he ends up taking over just about every country he enters. Um, he pushes to the west, pushes into France, where he actually takes over France, has a pretty big, strong chokehold on Europe itself. But while he's doing this, he's also trying to stay true to his promise of getting rid of impure races. Ultimately, guys, he believed that the Aryan race was a superior race. That is blonde hair, blue eyes. And anything less than that, he wanted to get rid of. Basically, he said that these inferior races were really weighing down Germany, and that was a lot of what was causing their issues. So ultimately, while he's trying to take control of Europe, he's also trying to get rid of your Jews, physically and mentally handicapped individuals, anybody that was a Jehovah's Witness, Romas, Slavs, Gypsies, anybody else that he did not deem superior or part of that Aryan race. Okay. Um, in order to do this, guys, in order to make sure that he had support to get rid of all of these millions of people, he actually used propaganda. And ultimately, guys, propaganda is using posters, radio shows, movies to show that these races are inferior to themselves. It's ultimately using visual aids to show how bad these races are. And ultimately, what started happening is because they were portraying these races as being so bad, the Germans responded with, "Oh, well, if they're this bad in these videos and these movies and these radio shows and on these posters, then they must be that bad." So they ended up going through and started to destroy Jewish homes, businesses, churches, ultimately just tearing down their way of life little by little. Okay, here are some examples of propaganda. You can see right here they're portraying this Jewish man as almost like he is a vampire or a monster. You can see the Star of David on his forehead, and these people right here are all representing Germans. Ultimately, they're showing that these Jewish people are destroying German livelihoods. Right here, you can see again they're portraying this Jewish man as that he's trying to take over the German people. And again, these Jewish people are being made out to be monsters. Okay. Ultimately, guys, the Holocaust is the systematic killing of over 11 million innocent people, 6 million of those whom were Jews. So, for about 12 years, the Germans come in and they target all men, women, and children who were believed to be inferior to these pure Germans, okay, this Aryan race. Um, you've seen videos, you've seen pictures of these concentration camps, the inhumane living conditions that these people were in. It was just insane. It was unfathomable. I honestly cannot think about how it was to live day by day in these horrible conditions. Okay. Auschwitz, of course, was one of the worst. Basically, you were pretty much being sent to be killed if you went to Auschwitz. Believe it or not, the people around Auschwitz, they could have easily just destroyed that whole concentration camp, but instead they've actually left it as a monument, because they want people to understand that this is where millions of people lost their lives, and they don't want people to forget, in order so this doesn't happen again. So while lots of people around our country and around other countries are trying to destroy history, the people that live around Auschwitz, they want to keep it in order to make sure that this does not happen again. Ultimately, guys, as Hitler continued to try to get rid of these impure races, by 1941, he started passing down laws. The first was that every Jewish person was required to wear a Star of David. Of course, if you did not register and wear your Star of David, that immediately led to lots of issues, being truly just sent away, being dealt with, killed on the spot. So they were being forced by fear to wear these Stars of David. Also, they were going into mainly Jewish areas, and the Nazis were basically sending them out of their homes, um, apartments, actual homes. They were kicking them out of their businesses, and they were sending them to these areas that they would cordon off. They would blockade these areas of the city called ghettos, and this is where they were being forced to live. Um, After that started, then Hitler started having them removed to concentration camps. Ultimately, guys, some of these camps were considered working camps, where they were actually doing hard labor, but they were also mass killing facilities. Uh, Most of them, they were definitely being mass killed by gas chambers. Um, at times it was just they were just dying off because their bodies couldn't handle the the abuse that they were being put through. Okay, you can see in this picture all of the Stars of David. Okay, these kids were probably a little older than y'all. They look to be younger than y'all, but because they have truly uh, been malnourished for so long, their bodies look like they are much younger than they are. Okay, that's just a picture of one of the gas chambers. A lot of times, these people, as they were being brought in, they were made to strip down, and they said, "Hey, you're going to take showers in order to get clean to come on into the camp." And then ultimately, they just killed them all. So once World War II started taking a turn for the worse for Germany, and the Allied power started um, gaining speed and starting to back Germany down, they said, you know what, we need to go ahead and start getting rid of the evidence of all of these concentration camps. So basically, they started putting out these kill orders. They would take people on what they were calling death marches. They would just march them until they would get to a certain point, and then they would just kill everybody, and then they would put them in mass graves. Finally, in 1945, when the Allies started sweeping through Poland, Czechoslovakia, those areas where most of the concentration camps were, they started to very quickly figure out there was something not right. They were finding these camps where these people were just skeletons. There was no food. They were uh, piles of dead bodies everywhere. It was insane what these men were walking into and finding. And of course, over the years, people tried to hide it. They tried to say they didn't know what they were talking about. Um, and so ultimately, this is when you started seeing the liberation of people from these camps. Okay. You can see in this picture back here, you can see the American flag because the American soldiers were coming in, and they knew, hey, we're finally saved. Ultimately, guys, once these Jewish individuals and people of other races were saved, a lot of these people were afraid to go back to their former homes because they'd already been taken from them once. So in 1948, the United Nations came together and they created the actual state of Israel. And this was where Jewish immigrants were finally able to go back and call home. Okay. Right here, all of this orange, this was the state of Israel. Okay. Now, we're not going to go into a whole big detail about it because that's another lesson for another grade level. Okay. But basically, guys, we start getting to the end of Nazism. Finally, in 1945, not only were the Holocaust camps being liberated, but the Allied forces were also getting closer and closer to Germany. They were pushing them back into their own country. On April 30th of 1945, Hitler had finally conceded to the fact that he was about to be defeated. Because he did not want to be taken prisoner, he retreated to his underground bunker where his whole family was actually down there. They all committed suicide. His family by cyanide tablets that they just took a bite of. They once they bit down on them, they only had about 10 seconds. Hitler himself committed suicide. At that point, guys, the Nazi reign was over. Once the Allied troops got into Germany, took over, uh, once the war was officially over in Germany, they officially started banning all symbols of Nazism to get rid of all of that fear. And our next lesson is going to talk about how did they go from being this communistic Nazi society to what came next. Okay, but finally, guys, in 1945, uh, World War II comes to an end, and that is where we stop.